Today, we're getting into a story that's just wild. It's about the Manic Street Preachers, a story packed with fierce intellect, shocking tragedy, and honestly, an almost unbelievable comeback.
So, what you're looking at here, this is the Manic Street Preachers today. They're absolute icons of British rock, right? And this is a big but, the journey to get to this stage, to still be here, it was defined by a loss so huge it almost destroyed them.
And that really brings us to the heart of it, doesn't it? The big question that hangs over their entire story. How does a band not just survive something like that, but actually thrive after losing its creative soul? It's a question they've been answering with their music for almost 3 decades now.
Okay, Act 1, the four-piece. To really get the triumph, you gotta understand the tragedy. So let's rewind. We're going back to the beginning, to this small Welsh town called Blackwood in the 80s. This is where 4 young guys started a band fueled by punk rock anger and, believe it or not, a whole lot of books.
So they formed back in '86. And their name? It's not from some grand artistic vision. As frontman James Dean Bradfield tells it, it literally came from a guy he'd see on the street in Cardiff who'd call him the Manic Street Preacher. He just kept the name. And you know what? It was perfect. It had that kind of provocative, intense vibe they were going for.
And in those early days, man, they were such a contradiction. I mean, look at them. You've got this androgynous glam punk thing going on, but then you listen to the lyrics, and there are these incredibly smart, dense lines about culture, alienation, boredom, and despair. These weren't just songs, you know? They felt more like manifestos set to music.
So naturally, the music press was interested, but also kind of skeptical. Like, are these guys for real with all this? Well, that very question led to one of the most infamous, shocking moments in the history of rock and roll. Seriously.
This is what happened, May 15th, 1991. The band's co-lyricist, a guy named Richey Edwards, is in this heated interview with a journalist who's questioning their authenticity. So what does Richey do? He takes a razor blade and carves "for real" into his own arm. It wasn't a stunt. It was this deeply disturbing act of conviction. And yeah, it absolutely cemented the reputation. These guys were the real deal, to a dangerous degree.
Okay, so that same intensity, it would hit its absolute artistic peak a few years later. Richey Edwards' personal battles with depression, anorexia, and self-harm were getting worse. And all of that pain, all of that darkness, it got poured directly into their third album.
And that album, The Holy Bible, it's a brutal masterpiece. The sound completely shifted. It's this bleak, uncompromising post-punk. And the themes, wow. We're talking suicide, fascism, the Holocaust, consumerism. Really heavy stuff. There's even a song called Forced 7 Pounds, that's 4 stones, 7 pounds, which is the weight where death becomes pretty much unavoidable. It was about Richie's own battle with anorexia. The critics loved it, called it a work of genius, but as you can probably guess, it didn't exactly fly off the shelves.
Make no mistake, this was Richie's album. Every ounce of his pain, his intelligence, his inner turmoil, it's all right there on the record. He poured so much of himself into it that right after they finished, he had to be hospitalized. He'd literally given it everything.
And this is where the story takes its most tragic turn. Look at this timeline. The Holy Bible comes out in August '94. Then, just a few months later, February 1st, 1995, Richey Edwards disappears. Gone. He was supposed to fly to America for a tour. His car was found abandoned near a well-known suicide spot, and he was just never seen again.
Act 2, triumph from tragedy. I mean, can you even imagine? The band was just shattered. Their best friend, their creative engine was just gone. For half a year, there was nothing. Silence. It really looked like the Manic Street Preachers were done for. But then, they made a decision.
Amazingly, with the blessing of Richie's own family, they decided to continue. But think about the weight of that. The task ahead of them seemed impossible. How do you even begin to write music when the guy who wrote your most iconic words is gone?
Well, what happened next was a total transformation. It had to be. They knew they couldn't survive by staying in that dark, claustrophobic world of the Holy Bible. So their first album as a trio, Everything Must Go, was a deliberate shift. The sound was huge, orchestral, anthemic. It was full of this defiant life. And just look at the difference. The Holy Bible sold around 600,000 copies. Everything Must Go? Over 2 million. It went triple platinum in the UK. They went from a cult band to one of the biggest bands in the country, just like that.
And this quote from bassist Nicky Wire just says it all. He called their first single, A Design for Life, a bolt of light from a severely dark place. That song was literally their salvation. It became this incredible anthem about working-class pride and just getting through it. It rescued them, and it connected with millions of people.
And the success just kept building. Their next album in '98, This Is My Truth, Tell Me Yours, gave them their first ever UK #1 single. And the song, which had this crazy long title, proved that even as superstars, their political and historical edge was sharper than ever.
So that song title, If You Tolerate This, Your Children Will Be Next, it was lifted straight from this propaganda poster from the Spanish Civil War, a warning against fascism. It just goes to show, even when they were at their most popular, the Manics never ever lost that intellectual fire that started it all.
So, let's talk about their legacy. Because what came next was decades of success, all of it, built from the ashes of that unimaginable tragedy. And the numbers are pretty staggering. We're talking more than 10 million albums sold worldwide.
2 #1 albums in the UK, and get this, they were decades apart. That's a rare thing, and it just shows how they've stayed so relevant for so long.
And the awards. Just look at this. They've been showered with them. 11 NME Awards, which shows the cool kids still love them, but also 4 Brit Awards and 8 Q Awards, which proves their massive mainstream appeal. They've consistently been one of the most acclaimed bands out there. But through all of that success, all the awards, all the sold-out shows, they've never forgotten. They've never forgotten Richey. To this very day, at every single gig they play, there's an empty microphone set up on stage for him. It's this silent, incredibly powerful tribute to their lost friend.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. The story of the Manic Street Preachers is it's a story of surviving the impossible. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Can art really take that kind of profound loss and turn it into something hopeful, a legacy that endures?